Hello, I'm Mariam Mashiri, live from the Qatari capital, Doha. It's day 15 of the US-Israel war with Iran. Over the next 10 or so minutes, we'll bring you our special programme looking at the key developments from today as the war enters its third week. Well, the US has struck Iran's economic lifeline, targeting Iranian military assets on Kharg Island. The rocky outcrop holds 10% of the world's proven oil reserves and 15% of global gas reserves. But Iran says the island's oil infrastructure was not targeted and exports are underway. Fire rages in the United Arab Emirates. The port of Fujairah, home to one of the largest oil storage facilities in the region, is hit by debris from a drone interception as Iran continues to target regional energy infrastructure it believes is linked to American interests. In Iraq, the US embassy in Baghdad is struck in a suspected missile attack. Black smoke billows into the sky as the US warns its citizens to leave Iraq immediately. And an overnight Israeli strike has killed 12 medical staff at a healthcare centre in southern Lebanon. Authorities say the country says 26 paramedics have now been killed in the last 12 days as Israel continues attacks on what it claims are Hezbollah command centres. But first, we start with the latest from the United States, where President Trump has said he hopes China, France, Japan, South Korea and the UK will send warships to the Gulf to reduce the Iranian threat in the Strait of Hormuz. In a post on Truth Social, the president said despite destroying, as he put it, 100% of Iran's military capability, it's still easy for Iran to send a drone or drop a mine in the waterway. Well, the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed after repeated Iranian attacks on oil tankers in the area. A reminder, on a normal day, around 20% of the world's oil exports pass through the strait. Today, India's shipping ministry said 2 Indian flag tankers did manage to pass safely through that strait. Well, let's get the latest now from Washington and our correspondent, Simi Jolaosho. And Simi, what more have we heard from the US administration over the last 24 hours about the war?
Yeah, well, President Trump has spoken about the Strait of Hormuz. He says that the US will secure the strait one way or another, keeping it open, safe and free by continuing to strike Iranian boats and ships in the area. He also urged allies like the UK, France, South Korea, Japan and even China to also send naval ships to the region to help secure the strait, but warned that even though Iran's navy is badly defeated, that they could still threaten the waterway through the use of drones, mines and short-range missiles. President Trump also boasted on Truth Social about a US military strike on Kharg Island, which you've mentioned there, Mariam, is a key hub for Iran's oil exports. He says that the US has, quote, totally obliterated military targets on the island, but that they chose to spare oil facilities for, quote, reasons of decency. And that's something that Iran has responded to, saying that if the US were to target any of its oil facilities or energy infrastructure on the island, that it too will target infrastructure owned or operated by companies that are linked to the US.
And reports, Simi, of thousands of Marines being sent to the Gulf. What do we know about this, and has the Pentagon confirmed these reports?
Yeah, so this report was first done by the Wall Street Journal and has been picked up by various US media, saying that an American naval task force is on its way from Japan to the Gulf, and it comprises of several warships, including up to 5,000 Marines and sailors and even an amphibious assault ship. Now, the Pentagon hasn't confirmed this, citing operational security, but this would back up Mr. Trump's post about this, increased action in the Gulf. This could mean potential military escorts for commercial shipping around the region, or increased action specifically on Kharg Island. And analysts have said this could be a potential turning point in this war. Both sides are determined to escalate possibly in a bid to force a surrender. But further action on Kharg Island, analysts have said, could increase already soaring oil prices, but also could mean troops on the ground. And that's something that the American public and also lawmakers here, including Republicans, have said they would not support. They do not want military boots on the ground. The big question that the administration has been asked is, when would this war end? And President Trump has said that the US military will continue hitting Iran very hard over the coming week. And with regards to the war ending, he says that would happen when he feels it in his bones.
Simi, thank you. Well, the US president's call for American allies to send warships to protect the Strait of Hormuz comes just hours after the US says it struck 90 military targets on that Kharg Island located in the Persian Gulf. Around 90% of Iran's oil exports pass through the island, but no oil infrastructure was targeted in those US attacks. Mikey Kay is a military analyst for the BBC Security Brief. He's been taking a closer look at the operation and what it could signal about what's next for US strategy in the war.
The significance or the critical capability of Kharg Island has been confirmed overnight as being on the US target set, with strikes by B-2 Spirit stealth bombers using 2,000-pound bombs targeting critical Iranian forces capability on the island, infrastructure and notably precision strikes on the runway. Additionally, there's open source intelligence to suggest that the USS Tripoli, an amphibious assault ship, is now set sail from Okinawa in Japan and heading towards the Gulf of Oman, being identified in the Bashi Strait between Taiwan and the Philippines. This ship is unique in terms of its ability to carry the F-35B short takeoff and landing 5th generation fighter jet. In fact, it's called the Lightning carrier because of that, the F-35 Lightning. And the estimates of how many Marines are on that, you're looking at around 2,500. The big question is, once the USS Tripoli arrives in the Gulf of Oman, it has to negotiate the treacherous Strait of Hormuz, which likely will be mined by the Iranians. But it's not just the mines, it's the asymmetric threat. So it's the drones, it's the fast attack craft. All of this has the potential to prove a problem for the US and the Gulf states. It all comes back to that cost-benefit ratio. At around $1 billion a day for the US to support this conflict. And when you look at the rate at which the Gulf states are burning through interceptors, such as the Patriot missile, estimated at 800 in the first 3 days, the big question I've got is just how sustainable in terms of stockpiles and cost is this for the United States?
Our security correspondent Frank Gardner is following developments from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. He has this assessment on what a deployment of US Marines to the Gulf could mean.
Most people are saying, well, why is he sending this amphibious ready group all the way from the Sea of Japan if he's not planning to actually invade and occupy Kharg Island? Is it to try and intimidate Iran? Because Iran, that doesn't seem to be working so far. Kharg Island is the beating heart of Iran's oil industry. It's through which around 80 to 90% of its oil exports flow. It's a terminal just offshore on the north of the Gulf. And that will upset China because China is the biggest customer for Iranian oil. It will also take potentially some of the oil off the market if their oil exports are affected. There is a degree of bombast and bluster on both sides here, with Iran threatening to damage US interests and President Trump saying, well, if you do that, we'll do this, and so on. But beneath all of that, behind all of that, you strip away the kind of the polemics and all of this, there is a dangerous escalation here. There's no question that economics are playing a major part in this. Iran knows, or at least the Islamic Republic regime knows, it's only got to survive this to win. It's all very well Pete Hegseth, the US Secretary of War, saying, we've destroyed X number of targets, you know, we've blown this up and blown that up. Yeah, but if the Islamic Republic regime is still there and still posing a threat to countries in the region and to shipping, then this entire campaign has not worked. And I think the miscalculation, possibly by the United States, is by sheer undisputed military superiority, which it does have. Iran is no match for the United States, but by dint of that, it could somehow force Iran to comply with American demand, US and Israeli demands for that matter, to dismantle their ballistic missile force, stop supporting proxies. That hasn't worked, and the regime is still in place.
Well, there have been reports of more strikes inside Iran today. Residents from different parts of the capital, Tehran, have told the BBC's Persian service that the city was hit hard in strikes overnight from Friday into Saturday. Israel has issued evacuation orders for the part of the northwestern city of Tabriz, while reports from media in Iran say 15 people were killed in a strike on a factory which produces household electronics in the central city of Esfahan. As US and Israeli strikes on Iran continue, the BBC Persian service has been receiving messages from people living inside the country, keen to share what they're experiencing. Here are some of the messages received today, voiced by colleagues.
I was trying to sleep and woke up to the sound of explosions.
Something exploded nearby and it shook the house to the core. It was never like this. My heart was pounding.
I didn't go out at all. It seemed to be such a dangerous day.
That's the view from inside Iran, but now let's cross to Tel Aviv and speak to Kasra Naji, special correspondent at BBC Persia. And Kasra, what have officials in Israel been saying?
A new development here in the sense that the Israeli army is repeating that it has been attacking repeatedly checkpoints in the streets of the capital, Tehran, over the past 48 hours or more. And this is new in the sense that these checkpoints have mushroomed in the past week or so with the aim of possibly harassing and intimidating Iranians and preventing a possibility of a renewal of street protests by the Iranians. Don't forget that the Israeli strategy is basically to get rid of Iran's nuclear facilities and its missile programs, but also to create a space for the protesters to come out and take over power. So these attacks are becoming more regular, and Israeli army is reporting that they have killed a number of members of Basij militia and also the Revolutionary Guards manning these checkpoints.
Kasra, thank you. A lot of focus today has been on the Gulf, where there have been Iranian attacks on Saudi Arabia, as well as evacuation orders for parts of Doha here in Qatar. Well, in the United Arab Emirates, one of the region's largest oil storage facilities was hit by falling debris from an intercepted Iranian drone. The UAE consulate in Erbil in Iraq was also struck. For more on that, my colleague Nick Beek is following developments from Dubai.
President Trump says the US has already obliterated the Iranian military, but he's raising the stakes by now striking at a site that's so vital to Iran's oil industry, its wider economy, and possibly the survival of the government. And Iran has hit back, and it sent a fresh warning here to the United Arab Emirates for people living in cities to stay well away from American sites and interests wherever they may be.
The port of Fujairah on the east coast of the UAE, one of the biggest oil storage facilities in the Middle East, hit by a drone today as Iran tries to undermine Western economies. In Iraq, the US embassy in Baghdad was hit by a missile. This one of the biggest American diplomatic facilities in the world. But the US and partners say they're intensifying their war.
The global and regional struggle against Iran, led by the US President Donald Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is ramping up and entering the decisive stretch that will continue as long as necessary.
Nick Beek with that analysis from Dubai. Well, as the US-Israel war with Iran enters its third week, the consequences for the region and indeed the world are coming into sharp focus. Here in the Gulf, the threat of US economic assets, the threat to those assets, is ongoing, and offices, homes to big American companies have closed, and evacuation orders are now becoming a part of daily life. Iranian attacks on energy infrastructure across the Middle East and the effective blockade of the Strait of Hormuz has drastically knocked confidence in the oil markets, pushing up the price of oil and the price of gas, and in turn increasing costs for millions around the world. Then there is, of course, the human cost. Over 800 killed in Lebanon by Israeli strikes, and estimates of 1,300 civilians killed in Iran, with millions more displaced. Closer to home for President Trump, the death toll of American service members now stands at 13. He says the war will end when he feels it in his bones, while the Iranians, well, they vowed to fight on. So as week 3 of the war begins, the uncertainty of how and when it will end, that remains as unclear as ever. Whether you're joining us on YouTube, on TikTok, on Sounds, on radio or TV, thank you for your time. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the Iran War Today.